Marcus was only 10, a kid who couldn't seem to pass a single test, even though his father had all the money in the world to buy him the best tutors, the fanciest schools, every advantage you can imagine. Yet every week, Marcus came home with another failing grade stuffed deep in his backpack, hoping no one would notice. What he didn't know was that his father, a billionaire who ran companies like other men ran errands, was secretly planning to send him away to a boarding school permanently. He thought Marcus was broke and a lost cause. But then came the day a new maid walked into their mansion. And everything changed. Marcus sat in the back row of class, watching letters swim like fish on the page. To everyone else, spelling seemed easy, almost effortless. But for him, the B's flipped into D's, the words tangled themselves into nonsense. When the teacher collected the tests, his paper looked like it belonged to someone years younger. Tyler, the class loudmouth, leaned over and said, just loud enough for everyone to hear, "My dad says your dad's the richest man in town, but you can't even spell cat." The whole row laughed. Marcus lowered his head, wishing he could melt right into the desk. That afternoon, his father's sleek black car pulled up outside the school. Mr. Whitman, tall, sharp-suited eyes like steel, scanned the crowd like he was making a business deal. Marcus climbed in, bracing for the quiet lecture. "Did you get your tests back?" his dad asked, voice cold but careful. Marcus lied, said no. But of course the teacher had already called. "Marcus," his father said, gripping the wheel tighter, "trying isn't enough anymore. You need to stop being careless." Careless. That word cut deeper than anything. Because Marcus wasn't careless, he was desperate. The mansion looked like something out of a magazine, 12 bedrooms, marble floors, chandeliers, but to Marcus it was just a lonely castle. That evening, his dad sat at the head of the dining table, scrolling through emails, barely looking up. Marcus pushed food around his plate, dreading the moment his grades would come up again. Then quietly setting down dishes at the far end was the new maid. Her name was Naomi. She was young, sharp-eyed, with a presence that felt different from the rest of the staff. She wasn't supposed to interrupt, wasn't supposed to speak. But when Mr. Whitman snapped, "Children your age should be reading chapter books, not fumbling with basic words," Naomi froze. She had seen that look before, shoulders shrinking, face burning with shame. She couldn't stay quiet. "Excuse me, sir," she said softly. "Has Marcus ever been tested for dyslexia?" The room went still. Mr. Whitman blinked. "He's been tested for everything," he said firmly. "The doctors say he's normal. He just doesn't focus." Marcus looked up, whispering, "What's dyslexia?" Naomi stepped closer, lowering her voice, like she was letting him in on a secret. "It's when your brain sees letters differently. They move, they flip, they play tricks. It doesn't mean you're not smart. It just means you learn in a different way." Marcus's eyes widened like she'd just described his exact world. For the first time, he didn't feel crazy. He didn't feel alone. His father, though, wasn't convinced. "That's enough," he snapped. "This is a family matter." But Naomi didn't back down. "My mother was a specialist. I had dyslexia myself when I was a child. People said I was lazy, unfocused, just like they say about him, but it wasn't true." And Marcus whispered almost in disbelief, "The letters moved for you too." She nodded, smiling gently. "Yes, they danced on the page for me, until my mother taught me tricks to make them stay still." That was the first time Marcus smiled in months. The next afternoon, while Mr. Whitman was away at meetings, Marcus came home sick from school. Naomi found him at the kitchen table, worksheets scattered, frustration etched across his small face. He muttered, "I'm stupid. No matter how hard I try, I'll always be stupid." Naomi sat beside him, spreading out colored pencils and a clean sheet of paper. "Let's test that theory," she said. She watched as he worked out a math problem in his head, then wrote the wrong numbers on paper. His face crumpled proof he thought of his stupidity. But Naomi leaned in. You knew the answer. Your brain just scrambled it on the way out. That's not stupidity, Marcus. That's dyslexia. She showed him tricks her mother had taught her, color-coding numbers, tracing words in the air, covering half the page to keep it from swimming. Slowly, the chaos started to make sense, and when he got a problem right, Marcus looked up at her like she'd just given him superpowers. For hours, they worked in secret. By the time Mr. Whitman came home, Marcus was laughing something Naomi hadn't heard from him before. Dad, look, he said, waving worksheets full of correct answers. Naomi showed me tricks to make the numbers behave. Mr. Whitman picked up the papers, stunned. For years, specialists had failed. And now in one afternoon, the maid had unlocked progress he'd thought impossible. What exactly did you do? He asked. Nothing magical, Naomi said carefully. Just different methods. Methods for a dyslexic brain. But Mr. Whitman waved it off. We've been told there's nothing wrong with him. He just needs more discipline. Naomi wanted to scream, but she held her tongue. That night she stayed up with her mother's old teaching journals, planning how to keep helping Marcus, whether or not his father approved. The next week, Marcus's confidence grew in secret. He raced home from school, eager for their sessions. But school was still brutal. Teachers didn't understand. His classmates mocked him. Tyler cornered him at lunch, sneering, "Guess your dad's shipping you off to baby school, huh?" Marcus sat there fighting tears, remembering Naomi's words. Different doesn't mean broken. Finally, Naomi decided enough was enough. She gathered Marcus's work, before and after sheets, progress charts, data she'd been recording, and marched into Mr. Whitman's study. He sat surrounded by contracts, preparing for a massive merger worth millions. She placed the folder on his desk. Mr. Whitman, your son doesn't need more tutors. He doesn't need discipline. He needs recognition. He needs to be evaluated for dyslexia. He looked up sharply. Do you understand what's at stake? I could lose everything if this deal falls through. And Marcus could lose himself if you don't show up for him tomorrow, Naomi shot back. Money can be earned again. But your son's belief that he's worth fighting for once that's gone, you'll never buy it back. The words landed harder than any boardroom insult ever had. For the first time, Mr. Whitman faltered. The phone on his desk buzzed his assistant, confirming the New York flight for his emergency meeting. Millions on the line. He stared at it then, at the folder Naomi had given him, stamped with the name of a specialist willing to see Marcus the next day. The room was silent but heavy. After what felt like forever, he reached over, turned off the ringer, and said, "Cancel my trip. My son is worth more." Naomi exhaled, tears in her eyes. The next day, father and son sat in a quiet office lined with books, as Dr. Reynolds, a seasoned specialist, guided Marcus through tests that felt nothing like the ones before. Instead of just pointing out what he couldn't do, she showed him puzzles, patterns, creative exercises that lit him up. Hours later, she turned to Mr. Whitman and said, "Your son is dyslexic, yes, but he's also gifted. His brain processes information in extraordinary ways." Marcus looked up, eyes wide. "So, I'm not stupid." Dr. Reynolds smiled. "Not even close. Some of the world's most brilliant people were just like you. You're different, Marcus, but different can be powerful." From that day forward, things shifted. Marcus transferred to a school that celebrated unique learning styles. He used overlays, traced letters in the air, built science projects with clay and wire. His grades rose, but more importantly, so did his confidence. Mr. Whitman framed Marcus's first report card from his new school, hanging it next to his business awards, not as a reminder of wealth, but of the day he chose his son over profit. Naomi's role in their lives changed too. No longer just the maid, she became a mentor, a friend, a guide. And when Mr. Whitman offered to sponsor her own studies to become a certified learning specialist, she realized her late mother's legacy would live on, not just in Marcus, but in every child she would one day help. Months later, on the anniversary of their first meeting, Marcus handed Naomi a handwritten story titled "The Boy Who Could Catch Dancing Letters." At the bottom, he'd scrawled, "For Naomi, who showed me I wasn't broken." And for the first time in his life, Marcus truly believed it. But here's the question that lingers. What if Naomi had stayed silent? How many kids out there are still being labeled careless, lazy, or dumb, when really their brains just work differently? How many parents are too busy chasing success to notice the genius sitting right at their dinner table? Tell me what you think. Was Mr. Whitman right to sacrifice millions for his son's future, or was it reckless? Have you ever seen someone written off as slow when really they were brilliant in a different way? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I want to hear your stories. And if this one moved you, hit subscribe because the next story might just hit even harder.